Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. It's time for another Dyna video. So this is a continuation of the last couple of videos we've done where we were out looking for bikes that we could buy pretty cheap, fix them up, put some cool parts on them, correct what other people have screwed up, and hopefully give these bikes a second or maybe even third life. So we worked on the blue and silver 06 Lowrider, which I actually am not done with. I'm shooting these videos kind of simultaneously, but maybe you can see it in the background over there. It's still a work in progress, but by the time this video goes up, that bike will have been done. And we're moving on to the second bike that I got on the same day, which is the red 99 Super Glide. So this bike is definitely a little bit more of a project, and we're gonna talk about some of the stuff that we need to do. If you caught the very first video where we kind of introed the whole thing and showed you getting the bikes, you know a little bit about the bike, but I'll talk a little bit more about it now and tell you what we've got planned for it. So a little bit about these bikes to start off with. The big thing about Super Glides that might be a turnoff for a lot of people is the blonde, gray, blonde, whatever you want to call it, motor versus black. And in a lot of cases, I think that assumption is correct, that these motors don't always look great, and when they get dirty and grimy or get paint on them or whatever, they can look really bad. But this one is actually really clean. This bike has definitely not been, had a whole bunch of leaking and junk and stains and stuff all over this. It's clean. So I like this core. If you're into Super Glides, then you don't mind the blonde motor, and I think we can make something pretty cool about this. Now, what makes this bike a problem is that the upside of Super Glides is that they typically come with mag wheels and mid controls. And obviously you can see here, I have no mag wheels and I have no mid controls. Obviously this bike was changed at some point. Now I say obviously, I'm not certain the 99 Super Glide came with mag wheels. I'm 90% sure it did. All the other ones did, but 99 being the first year of the twin cam, I don't know. Harley did make a couple little changes to some part numbers and things like that very early on with these, but I do think that this bike had both those things, and either they were salvaged, so to speak, to put on another bike, kind of scavenged, I guess would be the better word, or somebody just decided they wanted forwards, and which is certainly possible. A little less likely somebody would have put spokes on it, but hey, there was a time, particularly, maybe about 15 years ago, where spoke wheels were the thing. So who knows? Maybe this was all done. So that is the bad news, that we've got two things this bike should have had that would have made it cool that it doesn't have anymore. Well, the good news is I've got both those things. I found a really, really nice set of 13 spoke mags to go on here. I'll show you those when we get to it, but they are gorgeous. Not trashed at all. And I got a set of OE mids to go back on here. And fortunately for me, over on the primary side, the shifter shaft that runs through the primary is still on this bike. So I'm not gonna have to take the primary apart to put the mids on. It's gonna be hopefully a very simple bolt off, bolt on procedure. And then we'll be back to a pretty good starting point. So from a financial perspective, I did get a really good deal on this bike. So the money spent on the mids and mags plus the cost of the bike is roughly what I would have paid for a bike in this condition, a Super Glide in this condition with the original equipment on it. So kind of brings us back to an even point. Now, in terms of what else we want to do on this bike, there's a whole lot, I've said this on the other bike, there's a whole lot I would do if this was mine, but trying to build a bike that's a little bit more universally appealing and not trying to go overboard with spending money so that we can't actually sell it and we wind up underwater, it's a little tough to thread that needle. So you kind of have to make some choices, and I don't want to say compromises. I don't really want to compromise. I'd rather do one thing right and not do another thing rather than do two things halfway, if that makes sense. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're gonna do, I guess. Number one, the bars and risers on here. Now, there's technically nothing wrong with this stuff, although it's absolutely not the parts that I would have chosen. Number one, I wouldn't have put a chrome riser on this bike. I would have put black. It's got black bars. I would have done a black riser. These bikes, the Super Glides, don't have a lot of chrome on them. The Super Glide Customs do. They have chrome covers everywhere, but the Super Glides, the FXD models, have a polished or just aluminum covers everywhere, and they look really good, natural. So you know, adding chrome to the bike, I don't think is really necessary. I think keeping with that like raw aluminum look and black and working with both those, particularly with this deep red, which by the way, this color is why I bought the bike. I love these early kind of cherry burgundy red paints that Harley did. So there's some FXRs with some great red paint from the early 90s. Obviously, you know, Dyna's late 90s. There's a bunch of them out there. I don't love, you know, the bright kind of like Kool-Aid red or whatever, but these kind of more muted, a little bit darker reds I just love. So anyway, back to the bars. So the risers are not the color I would have picked. The bars themselves, these are not meant for set up for internal wiring, which I just think is so lazy, and I can't in good conscience do a bike with external wires for the handlebars. Just looks terrible. So I happen to have, and actually I'll grab them because they're sitting right here. I happen to have a set of Bung King pullback risers and a, whose bar is this? Big Al's bar. So this combination together, actually, I already used once. It was, I mean, not this combination, but these two parts. I used on the dyno we did last year, the Super Glide Sport, the DX, the 04. Wound up selling that bike and changing the bar and risers to something a little bit more premium for a buddy of mine who bought it. So we had these as takeoffs, and I'm gonna use them again. Now, obviously I saved some money by, you know, two good parts here. The Bung King risers are inexpensive, but they're nice because the wiring can run inside the legs of the riser, so it keeps it nice and clean. The lucky thing, and there's not a lot of lucky things on this bike, but one lucky thing is that this bike was set up for taller bars. This brake line has a huge like bend in it. The handlebar wiring is long. The clutch and throttle and idle cables, they're all got slack in them. So I don't know if there's gonna be enough in all that to go with the height that I've got here. I think that's probably about 12 inches. Maybe it's a little bit shorter. I have to remeasure. I think it's, yeah, it's probably about 8 and 6. No, that's too much. I don't know what it is. No, not 8 and 6, whatever. I'll measure it and I'll tell you later in the video. But because I'm saving the money on the bars and the risers, I'm not, I don't have a huge problem if I have to replace some of these lines. I mean, this stock brake line on these early bikes is awful. It's the rubber and steel one. So we can get a, you know, vinyl coated stainless steel brake line in the right length for very little money. We're gonna wind up flushing this brake fluid anyway. So what's the difference if we change the line? The clutch looks long enough, but again, if I gotta change the clutch cable, throttle idle cables, I mean, it's not a big deal. We'll change all those if we have to. Like I said, we're saving money on bar and risers, so we can spend a little bit here. So we're gonna get a better riding position, nicer setup. It's gonna be much cleaner up here. What else? Might leave the gauges where they are here, might bring them up onto the riser clamp. Not sure about that yet. Got to get rid of these giant turn signals, get some little micro LED ones in there. This bike already has an integrated taillight with LED, you know, everything back there. Never had a load equalizer or a signal stabilizer put on, so the turn signals don't work. So it needed a load equalizer anyway, which I've got, and because we're doing that, we can just put LED turn signals up front and clean this whole thing up. So bar, risers, all that's gonna get done. I don't have the mirrors I want to use for this. I just want to use black, like Repop OE, like teardrop mirrors. They're out of stock right now, but I'm trying to get a set of them. If I can, we'll put them on. If not, then maybe these Giganto mirrors might have to stay for the time being. Not the end of the world either way. What else? I mentioned in the other video, this bike's missing both the side covers. I wasn't sure, and I don't know if you've ever tried to find any of these parts, but battery and like electrical side covers, some of them can be had very easily and very inexpensively, and some of them are almost impossible to find. I kind of was assuming that these were the easy ones to find, and I was half right. So the battery cover is an easy repop part. Can get it from Drag in black. It costs like 35 bucks, no big deal. The other side, however, is an obsolete part that I don't believe anyone makes a repop for, but I got really lucky and found one on eBay. I don't know if maybe the person selling it didn't know what they had, you know? I found one person selling one for like $200, and that guy definitely knew. I got the one I got for 50 bucks, and I just hit that buy it now button, and it came, and it was the right one, so I actually already put it on. So you'll see that, I'm sure, when we're over on the other side of the bike. What else can we talk about? So we're gonna talk about this in a minute. This is gonna be the linchpin of this whole thing, but back here, you know, this is good, this is good. This bike might need brakes, I don't know. Obviously, we're gonna put new tires on with the new wheels. I don't know why I say obvious. If these tires were good, we could move them over, but the rear tire is completely gone. And the front tire, while it doesn't look terrible, the date code on this tire is insane. This tire is almost 20 years old. Crazy that tire is still on there and hasn't fallen off yet from dry rot. So new tires, new wheels, and we'll deal with the brakes. We'll check that out when we get there. The big question mark on this bike. If you know early twin cams, you know the Achilles heel of those bikes is the cam chain tensioners. So through 05 on the Dynas, through 06 on the other big twins, mechanically tensioned tensioners. Does that make sense? Tensioned tensioners. They are a failure point. The design is just such that they get a lot of wear and they will eventually fail. The average seems to be between 20 and 30,000 miles. It's right about where this bike is. I think it's got 20 and change on it, if I'm not mistaken. Don't know if they've been looked at, changed, replaced, any of that. So I gotta take a look. So I literally have not started the bike since I owned it, because if they're not broken and they're all about to break, I wanna change them before we get a whole bunch of shrapnel in the cam chest. So that's the very first thing I've gotta do, because if those chain tensioners need to be done, there's gonna be a lot more money to spend, and I might do more upgrades while I'm in there to kind of, you know, offset some of that, and it'll move this bike to sort of a different tier of price. It's still a 99 Super Glide, so, you know, we can't go too crazy because it's just not, this is never gonna be a $15,000 bike, do you know what I mean? But if I can inch it up a little bit with work I have to do anyway, then maybe we will. But I'm hoping I don't have to do it. I'm hoping we look in here and we find the chain tensioners, you know, look new, that they were either replaced or they just didn't get a lot of wear on them, whatever the case. But we'll check it out together. We'll see what we've got in there. So one way or the other though, I decided this is similar to what I was talking about on the purple and silver bike, but the opposite. So on that bike, I decided it really needed shocks to get the stance correct on it. And so I was gonna sacrifice not putting a pipe on it and just let the next owner have to figure out what they want for a pipe. This bike, although these shocks are no good, the stance, not no good in terms of like they're broken, but no good in terms of their original Harley junk shocks. The stance of the bike is okay, and I don't think it really needs the raised shocks for people to see what the potential of this bike's gonna be when it's done. The pipes, on the other hand, I think in this bike, the one big upgrade we can do is a really nice exhaust. So I'm pretty sure I wanna do a black 2-into-1 pipe, maybe a Thunderheader if they're in stock, if not, maybe a Bassani. But I think that is gonna be the right look for this bike. I think a black pipe will look really, really good on here. So that's gonna be the one big premium upgrade we do, assuming we don't have to do, you know, cams and tensioners and all this other stuff. The one big upgrade will be, well, I guess the bars are a big upgrade too, but the money I'm gonna spend will be on a pipe. The rest of it's gonna be my time and my spare parts. So anyway, I'm excited, right? So a lot more work definitely gonna go into this bike. Ironically, this bike, you know, I'm gonna make less money on it. This is new for me, the bike flipping thing. So trying to figure out how to buy and upgrade in a smart way is something I'm gonna have to figure out. But obviously I haven't sold either of these bikes yet. I haven't listed either one of them for sale. My intention, based on the math I've been doing, is I think I'm gonna make more money on the 06 than I am on this one, even though I've got to do a lot more work on this one. So something's gotta give there, I don't know. But in any event, hopefully we can build a cool bike. That's the main thing of this. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, I'm not trying to make, you know, 100% return on my investment. I just wanna take bikes that weren't that cool and turn them into something desirable. That's it, and make some videos along the way. So the first thing that we're gonna do on this project here is we're gonna check this cam chest out. So I'm gonna take the pipes off, I'm gonna take the forward controls off, and we're gonna crack this cam chest open and see what's going on. Now, that said, that is the first thing we're gonna do, and that's what's coming up next. However, the reason I'm shooting these videos out of sync is these chrome risers I need for the other bike. So I'm gonna turn the camera off now. I'm gonna pull these risers off this bike, and I'm gonna go use them on the other bike. So when we come back to do the cam chest, the risers will have already been taken off. So that's where they went, if you're curious, and maybe you already know because you watched the last video, but we'll come right back, we'll take a look at this cam chest, and well, there'll be no risers on this bike, and hopefully the other bike will be done. So stick around and we'll get into it. All right, well, got the risers off and scavenged for the other bike, and my guess is you've probably already seen that because this video is coming afterwards, but it's time to get these pipes off and get this cam cover open. This is the make or break for this project. If the chain tensioners are good, then might be able to turn this bike around and make some money on it. If it's not, we're gonna have to do a lot more work and might not make any money, but it's gonna be a cool bike either way. So I'm excited. I'd like to make some money, but hey, if we don't, we don't. Yeah, I guess that's it. Let's get these pipes off. All right, well, we made some progress and now we're stopped. First exhaust stud nut, real rusted. Can't really see it, but can't turn it and I can feel the rust in my finger. The other one looks just as bad. Front ones look awful too. So I have very little faith that we'll be able to save those. It's not a big deal, we can replace the studs. I just don't want to break them. So I don't really care if the nut comes off the stud or the stud comes out of the head, but either way, we gotta get those things out of there. So I'm gonna start soaking them with a little bit of penetrating oil, spray some Croil in there, and see if we can't loosen them up, break that rust free, and get these stupid things off of here. All right, got some penetrating oil soaking on there. I also put some penetrating oil on the heat shield band clamps there. Normally on a pipe like this, I wouldn't necessarily need to take them off, but I'm gonna try and get a bigger wrench on those exhaust stud nuts. So take the heat shields off if I can to get some more clearance. So these are all real rusty, but the Croil made quick work of them. So hopefully it'll do the same on the exhaust studs. All right, let's see if we can get any of these exhaust stud nuts to turn. All right, well, that's one. I don't know if any of the rest of these are stuck. I only tried one and saw they were all rusty and started spraying them off. So I'll show you this one when it comes off. You can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Yeah, so pretty gnarly. Studs don't look much better. I'm gonna hopefully be able to get them out because I don't want to have any rusty stuff left on here. All right, this one, let's try it this way. Ooh. Nice and easy. There we go. All right, there's another one. Pretty bad. All right, let's go to the back. Beautiful. I think the Croil is what saved us because my guess is they all would have been stuck. I still haven't gotten that one I tried first. That was the rear stud or the bottom stud on the rear cylinder. So that'll be the last one I get back to. Yep. Just as crusty as the last two. All right, let's see if I can get on that last one, the small guy. Ah, there we go. Broke free and coming off. Yeah. Lovely. All right, so this should be free now. Scrap. All right, with the pipes off and the first disaster averted, we are getting closer to getting this open. Because these forwards are coming off anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead and take them off now just to give us all the room we might need here with the cam cover. I mean, obviously we can get it off with this in place, but I'm just gonna work my way from the outside in. So we'll get this off and then we'll see what we got. That over there. All right, so this is interesting. So this bike, you know, I would call clean. You know what I mean? Like it looks good. The tins are basically perfect. No oil stains or anything like that. But you come down in here and you got a lot of like dirt and grime and stuff like that. I'm not put off by this at all. This is totally normal. I get customer bikes that are riding bikes that are, you know, only a couple of years old that look like this down in here. It's just that, you know, bikes get ridden and people just don't clean them that well. I'm guilty of it too. You know, something that's behind something else, it's gonna stay dirty. So what's nice is for the most part, usually this road grime is actually a really good rust inhibitor. You know, it kind of makes sense. You get a coating of like oil, grease, whatever on these powder coated surfaces and it kind of keeps the water away and protects them. So all you do is come in with a rag. There's not even, I mean, there's a little bit of, you know, maybe Croil on here, which is definitely helping to clean this off, but you know, that's it. Boom. I mean, clean. Obviously we got a lot more to go here, but it's actually really easy to get a bike that's, you know, looking a little bit weathered in that way back to, you know, fighting shape. So let me just grab another socket. I'll get this control removed and oil pan, and we'll start to get this cam cover off. All right, let's get this cover off. Now, probably I should take this exhaust bracket off first because it'll make less of a mess with the oil, but honestly, I'm just excited to get into here and see what we got going on. So I'm gonna wait and do that later. All right, moment of truth. Got a cam position sensor wire there, forgot about that. Not used to working on these early ones. Well, front tensioner looks really good, like really, really good. Can't say for sure exactly, but I will grab a tool, the chain tensioner removal tool, and I'm just gonna, I think you can just pull this back to look at the shoe without removing it. The inside one is obviously gonna be a lot harder to see. I'll do my best. I'll be able to get at least, I think, a good enough look at it, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the camera in there or not. So I'll spin this around for you guys and show it to you. But I'm feeling very positive. These must have been replaced. I can't imagine that these are original. This looks really good. Good news. Here, I'll move the camera in and try and show you. All right, so if you look at it from this side, you can see the chain has not dug down below into the shoe. So like what you see a lot of times, I don't think I can hold the flashlight and the camera with one hand. Let's try it. What you'll see here is that these sides will be raised up around the chain as the chain starts to dig into the tensioner. So if you look from the bottom side, you can see the same thing. It's still sitting on top of the tensioner. It hasn't cut into it, only slightly, very, very little bit. And then back here, I'm really not gonna be able to get a good angle at this. Can you see it? I feel like it's all shadow. No, unfortunately the camera's not gonna not gonna get in there. So you don't have to take my word for it on that one, but I'm gonna see if I can get that pulled back a little bit and see if we can get even a better look at it. Okay, so with the tensioner removal tool, I'm not obviously taking the tensioner off, but I can spin it back and you can actually see the whole pad. So what you can see here is there's obviously some wear, and this is, you know, always gonna happen. This is what happens with this much tension and this old style chain. It does wear, but there is, you know, there's a wear pattern for sure. I don't want that to pop off, it just slipped a little bit. But this has got plenty of life in it. Plenty of life. Nothing to worry about there. So now, to be fair, the front and the rear don't necessarily wear together, but they can have different wear. So it doesn't, no guarantee that the inner one is as good as that, but from what I can see, it looks pretty good, and this one looks really good, so I think we're good. Unfortunately, in order to get to that rear one, you have to do a whole lot of disassembly that I'm just not confident is anything close to necessary. So I think we're gonna call them good, and we are gonna continue on with the rest of this project. All right, so with that all done and our gasket surface is all cleaned up, new gasket here in place, I'm gonna go ahead and put this cover back on. Okay, so with the cam cover back on and the health of our chain tensioners confirmed, we're ready to start moving forward full steam ahead on this project. So what I really wanted to do was get that knocked out of the way so I can push the submit button on an order for a whole bunch of stuff that we need for this bike. And now that I know we're good, and I think we might be able to stick to a budget, I'm pretty confident that we can keep going with everything else. One other quick thing I did do while I was here was I couldn't help myself, just had to take that factory exhaust bracket off from under here. If you know Dynas at all, you know this bracket is a pain in the ass to get off unless you've got a real small T27 ratchet, like a really low profile one. You're not gonna get in there and get all of those. And even if you can get them all, which I've got the tools to do it, they're seized a lot of the time. So in this case, I got 2 of them out with the tiny ratchet and one of the other ones stripped, so had to cut the head off, and just once you get the plate off, you can turn these real easy once they're not under tension anymore. So fortunately, it's pretty easy to get a saw under there. The plate itself acts as a, you know, protective surface, so you're not gonna mess anything up. You might put some saw marks in that exhaust bracket, but who cares? So anyway, it's just one of my pet peeves. I hate seeing those left on there. It just feels like, I don't know, you could have taken it off, but it was too hard, so you didn't do it. But anyway, so that's off. I'm not exactly sure where we're gonna start, top to bottom, bottom to top, front to back. I don't know. I'm gonna order some parts. I guess we'll see what starts coming in, and we'll start working on this bike. I'm excited. Like I said, we got a tight budget. Hopefully we can stick to it, but you know, I'm excited to make this bike into something cool. The last one I think went really well, so I got high hopes for this one too. So here we go. All right, so what I'd like to do at this point is get started with getting the new bars wired up. So what I've got to do is get all this stuff disconnected, but most critically is get the wiring pulled out so I can access the connectors that are underneath the tank. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to remove the rear wheel and get access to the panel that's up in here that comes out so that we can hopefully feed the wiring up through the neck of the bike. Get those plugs out, we can get all this stuff disconnected. So I'm gonna start doing that, and hopefully we will have all that stuff free and we can get started with seeing if those new bars are gonna work with what we've got, or we've got to do some modifications. All right, with the rear wheel out of the way, we've got access to this little rubber plug panel, whatever you wanna call it, that we should be able to just pop out of here. This might be a little bit dry rotted, but there we go. So that is exactly what this is here for, is what we're doing, which is to get access to these wiring harnesses here. Now, this is a little bit kind of messed with here. I can see, I think this is the loop that we're looking for right here. What do we got here? Well, some acorns, maybe a sign of a mouse was living in there. But normally you'd see a loop, a service loop up under the seat here, and I don't see it. I also don't see the plugs sticking out, which means that the harness, it could have been pulled all the way out and never put back in, but I don't see the plugs. So those wires got to be here somewhere. So maybe it's kind of bunched up under here. I don't exactly know. I'm just going to have to kind of play it by ear. So what I think my next step here is, just so I can kind of start to get access to this, is I'm going to lower the bike down. I'm going to get the clutch and throttle cables and all that stuff disconnected off the bar. I'm going to get the switch pods disconnected off the bar. Then I'll have, once the bar is gone, I'll be able to take the tank cover off and start to get a better line of sight onto the wires that are coming out of the neck. And hopefully we can sort of get our harness free and pull it up through the neck and be able to get those wires unplugged. All right, so I'm in the process of detaching the bars here, and obviously I got most of the stuff off, and I've just got our throttle and idle cables left. And one of them looks like it's the throttle cable, had no issue coming off, but the idle cable, which I think this one is, it's hard to tell when it's upside down, but I'm pretty sure this is the idle side. The adjuster is a little bit seized. So I'm going to attempt to unstick it, put a little more penetrating oil on here, see what happens. Hopefully we can get this thing moving. If not, it's, again, not the end of the world. You can always replace an idle cable, but I'd rather not if I don't have to. So I'm just gonna do my best to get this unstuck, and hopefully we can continue on. Although, what I am gonna do just to keep the ball rolling here is I'm just gonna take this whole thing with the bars on it and just kind of fold it over here out of the way so I can get to the tank, which is what I was really trying to do here. So I got enough disassembled that if I have to wait a little while on this and see if that oil seeps in, it's no big deal. So that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so after a little bit of prying around in here, I did manage to locate our service loop. So this is a good thing. It means that the wires weren't, just pulled all the way out of the neck, and they basically got their extra length this way to put taller bars on. That's not what happened here. So we have the service loop we're supposed to have. It just wasn't totally put away correctly. What you want to do with this, and I'll show you when I do it at the end, is this shouldn't all be stuffed in here and crammed in. It should be pulled up and kind of folded over nicely under the seat. But because we have this loop here, this bottom part, it's gonna go right up to our hole in the neck here. And so I'm just gonna be able to feed this through. Let's see, it's starting to go in there, and pull our wiring up and out through the neck and be able to get access to the plugs. So let's do that now. All right, so this little mess right here is what we were trying to get access to. So we've got a left side and a right side plug. The other one's kind of down here. We've got one plug for our turn signals and a plug for the headlights. So we've got access to everything we need. We can get all these disconnected and get kind of all this stuff off, and we'll be left with the naked bike, and we can take these wiring harnesses, the switch pods and the turn signal wiring harnesses, over to the workbench and get them wired into our new bars. So let's rock and roll. Well, things are moving right along here. Got the bars put on, and originally I was just mocking them up to make sure that the wiring was gonna be long enough, and everything we've got had to solder in the new turn signals onto the old plug, no big deal. And the wiring that was here in the switch pods was actually long enough. Not a whole lot of extra, but long enough, which is a little surprising to me because I didn't see any splices in there, so maybe they were just really well hidden, or these might have just been pretty long from the factory. Maybe there was like a mini ape or something on here before. I don't know. But the gauges are still down here, mounted over the headlight eyebrow. And truthfully, I was gonna move them up here onto the riser top clamp. This bolt pattern is the same. It can go either way. And normally I like them up here. I kind of like the gauges right in the eye line, but based on this riser, and I threw the seat on the bike real quick, you can actually see the gauges perfectly right over the top of the riser clamp. So didn't really see any reason to move them. The indicator lights you can't see, they're blocked, but you move your head and you can see them, and honestly, it's not really something you need to be looking at all the time. So I don't think it's that big a deal, and I kind of like how it is, so I'm just gonna leave it. Obviously, if somebody wanted to move these from here to here, all you have to do is you don't have to pull any of that wiring out. You just have to extend the little harness, and this unplugs on the outside. So really not a big deal if somebody wanted to do that. The clutch cable is definitely gonna be long enough. We got plenty of room in that. Still probably even gonna be some extra like there was before. I'll try and route that and figure out a way to make it work as best as possible. Throttle and idle cables obviously are on. What I did here, I didn't mention, I wasn't actually able to get that jam nut unstuck, but I was able to remove the cables without undoing the adjuster on the idle cable. So put it all back in, and got it going and it's good. So, you know, the idle cable can't be adjusted, but the adjustment is correct for the moment. So it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Next thing to go on is clutch and brake need to get mounted back up. And here you can kind of see pretty clearly, I'll zoom in for you, what I was talking about these little cutouts to make sure that your turn signals can clear. So I'll zoom in on that. Okay, so your perch covers, the perch and the cover are gonna come in here. And obviously if this wire was not pushed in through this notch, it would get pinched. So you put this little notch in, make sure you have enough wire sticking out to mount the turn signal, and you're good to go. So we're ready to go ahead and get those perches mounted up, so I'm gonna do that now. All right, well, that's gonna be our bar setup. New grips, levers were on there already, and we got the 4-inch bars. No, I don't know how tall it is. It's 8-inch riser, 4-inch bar, 12-inch total. So that's what we got. Got everything on. That clutch cable is not perfect, but I'll work on that. But otherwise, I am liking that a whole lot. Definitely better than what was there, that is for sure. So those mirrors, like I said, the ones I want are on back order. If they come in, I'll throw them on. If they don't, I don't know, maybe I'll tell whoever buys it, I'll send them to them, because those big square chrome guys gotta go. But anyway, that's the bars. Let's move on. All right, the bar's on. Got a bunch of other things to do. I'm gonna start with the mids, because they've been sitting here and I haven't put them on yet, and I'm tired of looking at them sitting in a pile. So first thing I'm gonna do is take the brake push rod and get that started in here. I don't know, just guess at where I think a good spot might be. Then I'm gonna attach the brake rod onto the brake pedal. All right, so with that in place, looks like I guessed pretty high. So we can forward, moves it up, in, moves it out, okay. So, oh, can't do that anymore. So I like to get it as close as possible before I put this on, because I mean, now you just gotta turn this, you know, one flat at a time, but it is what it is, we'll survive. So we got some bolts, put some Loctite on. Okay. All right, so now we can adjust this the slow way by moving this a little bit at a time. Let's make sure we're going the right way. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's pause there and I'll put the foot peg on. All right, let's keep lowering that. And I'll grab a couple wrenches and tighten this bolt, and then we'll move to the other side and get the shift lever put on. All right, over on the other side of the bike, we're ready to get going with the left side mid controls. And you can see here the derby cover is removed. That has nothing to do with the controls, except that I was over here and wanted to start getting a look at doing a clutch adjustment to make sure that was adjusted correctly. Definitely needed a little bit of adjustment. And we also already drained the old fluid and added new primary fluid in. The other thing that I want to do here, in addition to putting the controls on, is because I was able to see the chain and kind of get in here with a little stick and a flashlight, I can tell the primary chain is a little bit loose. So we should be able to adjust the primary chain through this inspection cover here without removing the outer primary cover. So that's going to be related to doing the controls only insofar as we don't want to put the shifter on until after we do that. So I mentioned in the previous video when we kind of unboxed these bikes, although this bike did not come with forwards, did come with forwards and did not come with mids, what made life a little bit easier was that it did already have the mid shifter installed, so we don't have to disassemble the entire primary. So a lot of times what'll happen with bikes that have forwards put on them is rather than disassembling all of this, they will simply put this cap right here onto the mid shifter, and then there's a little bracket here that bolts the shifter arm on this side onto one of the case bolts here. So you can take that off and then this will be free again, and this is just held in place with a little set screw that I already loosened up. So we've got our linkage here, and ready to go here, and we'll just have to disconnect this. But before I do that, I'm gonna take the opportunity to take this cover off and check a little bit closer and then adjust that primary chain. And then I've got a new gasket here to replace the one that's under there with. So just take a quick look. I'm not sure if I've got the right wrench. Let's see, depends on how loose these are. These are T27s. I've got a little T27 screwdriver here. Yep, we're gonna get them off with that, at least those two. 3, yeah, all right. Didn't even have to get a ratchet. So 2 of these are gonna be long and 2 of these are gonna be short. Definitely need to seal this up a little bit better. Can feel some fluid there. So there's a short one. So the short ones just screw into the outer primary cover, and the long ones are gonna run all the way through into the inner cover. Okay, now we should be able to get that off. Sometimes it can be a little stuck. There we go, I think it's loosened up. There we go. Cool. All right, so there's that inspection cover removed. Just gonna throw that over there. And so now, you pull this old gasket out of here, and this looks like it definitely had failed. I can see some old primary fluid around it, and it's a little dirty in here, so that might have been a source of a potential leak, so probably good that we were changing that out anyway. Okay, so I can feel the chain now up here. It feels pretty loose to me. I think I'm gonna come up 1 notch on the adjuster. I'll zoom in a little bit so I can show you exactly what we're doing here. Okay, so hopefully this is visible here. This is the shifter tube itself with the shifter arm in here, or the rod, I guess it is. And then here is the adjuster for the primary chain. We're just gonna loosen that bolt or that nut up with a 9/16 wrench, and I'm gonna try and just go up 1 click. This is obviously a lot easier to do with the primary cover off, but we're gonna try and do it with it on. Oh, I think I just went down 1. Okay. see where that puts us. That feels pretty good right there. Yep, I like that. All right, so to be clear, there is obviously a free play setting that you need to measure the movement of the chain. You can't do that with this here, so you really have to do it by sight and by feel, which if you have not done it before, I would not suggest doing it that way. Take this off and really measure it. But in my case, I've done enough of these. You can see it through over here, which I'll just take a look over here just to kind of confirm. I've got a flashlight. You can look through here, I can push it, and I can see it moving. And that is gonna be a good tension for us. So, with that said, we can go ahead and put this cover back on. The only thing I've got to do is this O-ring right here. I don't have one. I just looked. I'd like to replace it. Didn't look like it was leaking, but if it does leak, we might have to take this back apart. But I'm hoping it doesn't. I'll order some just in case, but it's not a big deal to come back here and change that. The only other thing I've got to do is just clean up all this hardware before we put it back in. So I'm just gonna pause, get the hardware cleaned up, get our cover cleaned up. We'll put that back on and we'll get to installing that shifter. Okay, so before I put the cover back on, I'm gonna go ahead and just get this little retention bracket here removed. It'll make it easier to get this tube seated into the cover when it's got some free play in it, and I'll show that to you. So let's get this on here. Oop. All right, so with that removed, we should be able to move this. There we go. It's a little tight. Not really sure what's going on there. Okay, well, we found ourselves a little hurdle here. So something is not right with the way this arm is installed in here, and I don't know, this obviously would have been on here from the factory, but certainly wouldn't have been installed incorrectly from the factory. What I can surmise here is that this bike does have a new belt, final drive belt on it. I can tell because it's from BDL, it's not original. So in order to do that belt, the primary would have had to been disassembled. And it looks like, despite the fact that I basically bought the bike because I thought we weren't gonna have to do all this, I'm gonna have to take this inner primary off to figure out why this arm is getting held up here. So basically what's going on is there's not enough of it sticking out on this side. And you can tell that because when you put the cover on it, I could see it when it was on there before, there's not enough of the shifter tip sticking through to get the lever on. And I didn't think that was a big deal because, sorry, now I can't get this off. I didn't think that was a big deal because I figured it was just being held back that way by being attached to this bracket. Unfortunately, when I detach it from the bracket, the bracket's actually pushing it forward. When you push it into the position up here, which is where it would go. So this is the linkage that goes on here, and you can kind of see the location where this would sit is about here. It's actually rubbing very, very, very significantly. It's being really pressed onto the side of the engine case. So there's like a spacer or something that was installed in here that's not supposed to be. The other thing I can think of is, actually, you know what? I actually think I know what the problem is. I don't think I have to disassemble this. I think, so you're never gonna be able to see this on camera. I'm gonna have to take it apart to show you, but I literally just had this epiphany in my head. I'm hoping that this is the answer to this. This tube has a couple of O-ring grooves in it, and it has a groove that this little Y bracket that holds it in place sits in. Now, if I undo the Y bracket, which I can get to through here, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get it back on. And it's worst case scenario, if I drop something in here, I'm just gonna have to take it apart anyway, but we might not have to take the inner primary off even if I do that. So I'm gonna get this off and I'll be able to pull this tube out. And if I pull this tube out, I think what I'm gonna find is that it was pushed one notch in too far. I think they might have mistaken an O-ring groove for the groove for the retainer. You'll be able to see it better when I take it apart. I might be right, I might be wrong, but either way, worst case scenario, we're just gonna have to take it apart one way or the other. But I'm hoping maybe we don't. So let's see what we gotta do to get to that. It looks like I think a 1/2 inch bolt on there, maybe 7/16. But either way, let me grab a 1/4 inch drive ratchet with an extension so I can get in there. I'll pull that off and see what we can do. All right, well, I got the bolt and the washer out. Now the trick is to be able to get this out without dropping the retaining plate. Oop, look at that. Got the retaining plate with the magnet. All right, so there's the retaining plate. And now, in theory, we should be able to slide this tube out of here. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Boom. Okay. Now, here's what I'm thinking. So you can see you've got an O-ring in this groove and you've got 2 empty grooves here. What I think happened was whoever installed this put the retaining clip, let me grab it, be very clear here. I think whoever did it installed it here, which caused too much of this to be sticking out in the back. If we were to reinstall it and put it here, I think that's the answer. I really think somebody just kind of screwed up there. Now I really want to replace these O-rings. Given that I've moved them, that this one's in the back, I don't really want to go through this again. I'm gonna try and find the O-rings for this. Even if I have to go into, I do have them here. They're just in a full primary gasket kit. And I was hoping to not have to break one of those open. We can replace them though with some O-rings we can order. So, sorry, I'm thinking out loud here. None of this was thought of in advance, so I'm running a little long-winded, but I'm gonna replace these 2 O-rings. I'm gonna reinstall this, putting the retainer in the right spot. And I am like 90% sure at this point that that is gonna have been our problem and that we're not gonna have any further issues. At least that's my hope. So let me find some O-rings and we'll get these parts all cleaned and we'll put this back together and see if it's right. All right, so I went over and pilfered some new O-rings out of one of my primary gasket kits. And I took these 2 old O-rings off here and I've got 2 new ones ready to go on. Just put some assembly lube on them to pre-lubricate them. I'm just gonna put them into the grooves here. And we'll slide the tube back in. So we're not entirely out of the woods yet in terms of not having to take this cover off. There's a very real likelihood that I'm not gonna be able to get this clip in, or I'm gonna drop it or one of the screws or something in here while I try to do this. Normally you would just take the cover off to do this, but we're trying to save ourselves a little bit of time and money here. So I'm gonna slide this in. We don't wanna damage the O-ring as we do. And let's see where we're at. All right. So that looks, oops, see, now that's too far. That would have been where it was before. So I'm gonna try and pull it back out. That looks about right to me, I think. So let's see if we can get this retaining plate to drop in place. Okay. Let's do this. Get that lined up. Magnet off. All right, it's in place. Last piece of the puzzle is gonna be to get this bolt back in there. And I'm gonna put a little Loctite on here, because why not? And where is that ratchet I just had to do this? All right, so now if we can get this started without dropping it, then we should be theoretically good. All right, so now shifter is free to move. It's gonna be able to sit where we need it to sit, and we should be able to have enough threads sticking out, yep, to be able to get the shifter arm on. So I think, hopefully, that just took care of what could have been a really big pain with just a little bit of realizing what was going on before we got it all taken apart. So yeah, I'm gonna hopefully say that's a win there. So we should be able to throw the new gasket in place here, put our inspection cover on. Yes, that is looking 100% better than it was. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. And for the record, there is one piece that sometimes can be missing from this shifter assembly. It's a little like wave spring washer that goes between the tube and the shifter arm here. And I did see it back there. That washer was in place at the end of the shifter. I didn't mention it, but I probably should have. That's kind of an important thing. So let's get this secured in place. All right, so now we've got our arm moving freely here. And you can also feel that washer is in place by feeling the spring on the arm here. So another helpful little tip. Anyway, now, after that little detour, we can move on. I've got an OE shifter linkage here to go on. It's got some old lock patch on here, so I'm just gonna take this to the wire wheel, clean this off, and then we'll use just regular Loctite, blue Loctite, to attach our linkage onto here. I'm just gonna have to grab a nut, which didn't come with the controls I got, but no big deal. Just need a fine thread nut for this side. So it's gonna thread directly into the arm on the transmission, and we just need a nut for the back side of it here. So let me grab those parts after I get this guy cleaned up, and we'll be good to go. Cool. So just want this so that it's got some tension on it, but definitely need to still be able to fold in the event of a crash, God forbid. All right, next piece, shifter arm. So let's get this positioned. On here. Do I have a little rubber mallet around? Nope. All right. All right. A little Loctite on the bolt, and we'll get that put in place. All right, and there we go, mid controls. So, feeling good about that. So I guess all that's left to do over here is grab a new derby cover gasket, derby cover back on, and we'll be ready to move on to the next thing. All right, so with the mids done, the next big thing I want to tackle on this is getting the wheels changed over. So obviously what we've got on this bike is a set of laced wheels, which, like I said, not entirely sure if the Super Glides came with laced wheels or chrome wheel, or laced wheels or mag wheels in '99. I know from 2000 on up they did come with the mags, but '99, not too sure because it was the first year. But in any event, we need mags on this bike, and I scored a set of awesome two-tone polished 13-spoke mags for this bike. So I've got one right here. I'll show it to you before we get it set up. So these are killer looking. Really, really beautiful condition. The only marks you see on here are just a little bit of grease from putting these tires on. So obviously you can't have a beautiful brand new set of wheels without a nice set of tires on them. So I put a new set of Metzler Cruise Techs on here, which in my opinion are the best tires you can run on really any Harley, but certainly a Dyna. So what I'm gonna do is, bearings in here are good, freshly greased. Tires are on, mounted and balanced. Just got to swap over the pulley and rotor for the rear wheel and then the rotor on the front wheel. And then we can get these wheels changed over. So since we obviously already have the rear wheel off, I'm going to start with the rear wheel here. I'll get that rotor and pulley put on, and then we'll get it installed in the bike. All right, with the front wheel removed, I can go ahead and, same as on the back, just get this rotor moved over to that new wheel and we'll get it put on. All right, there's our front wheel. I think you can even tell how much nicer these are, or tell even better how nice these wheels are from the front, because it's a little bit bigger and then nothing in the way. But yeah, these are killer. I kind of can't wait to take a step back and see what this looks like on this bike. Okay, with the front wheel on, next thing we got to take care of is a new choke cable. So unfortunately, the choke cable that's on here, the plastic on it where the nut threads on to lock it onto this tab here is cracked. So choke cable is just kind of floating here. So new choke cable, not expensive, kind of a pain to put on, getting your hands in there, but we're obviously going to take care of that. So we'll go over to the other side of the bike, get the air cleaner removed, and throw a new choke cable on. All right, so with the air cleaner removed, we got access to the carburetor. And what we're trying to do here is get to where the choke cable comes into the back side of the carburetor. So with the air cleaner removed, we got a little bit better access, and then we can just pull the carburetor off the intake manifold, and then we'll be able to get a wrench down on here to get the choke cable removed. In addition, obviously we're gonna get some carb cleaner, clean all this stuff out so we can get this looking nice again. Probably a bunch of, who knows, oil, gas, whatever, all over this thing. So we'll get it cleaned up, and we'll get everything hooked back up, and hopefully it'll be one step closer. All right, so just to give you a better view here, this is what we were just turning there, and the whole cable will just pop out. And so you can see what broke here. It's a little hard to see, but you can see that big crack, hopefully through there. That is supposed to be like that, and now it's all pulling apart. When that pulls, that part's supposed to stay down. So, in any event, that's no good. Get a new one put on. All right, so here's our new cable, reusing the pieces down here at the end that go into the carburetor, and obviously replaces the rest of it, including the broken piece down here. So we'll get this slid into place and hopefully connected, no problem. All right, I'm sorry I couldn't show you threading that on, but the camera being where it was making it basically impossible for me to get the right angle on this thing. So sorry, couldn't do it, but it's on, and I am going to pop the carb back into place, and then we will get the choke hooked up on the other side. Okay, so while I wait for the air filter to dry, we'll just leave all this stuff taken apart for the time being. We'll come back and do that all once that thing's ready to go back in. But for now, let's get to putting the pipe on. So first thing I already did was just pull out the old exhaust gaskets from the heads. They were pretty shot and no big deal, just to put some new ones in. So I've got a set here. Go ahead and put one of these into each head. And for what it's worth, you should always make sure you're using the correct type of gasket depending on the pipe you're putting in. So the pipe we're putting on has tapered flanges on it, or not flanges, but a tapered port, I guess, or tapered ends. So you want to use a tapered gasket. Some of them are flat, and you want to use a flat gasket in that case. All right. So with those in place, next thing I want to do is go ahead and get this old bracket removed, and then we'll put the new one on. And I think I might have said this a while back, but the reason I wait to take the old bracket off until I'm ready to put the new one on is I want to see what hardware comes with the new bracket and where it's going to mount, because a lot of brackets mount in different places, and you don't necessarily know what hardware you're going to need versus what you have. And if you have a bracket on there that's not original, you might have hardware that's not original, so it's just best to be able to see it all at once so you know you've got what you need. Okay, so our old bracket attaches in these 3 points here, and here is our new bracket that's going to attach 1, 2, 3 across the bottom like that. So we do have 3 new bolts, so we're going to be replacing 1, 2, 3 on the bike, and these 2 are going to come out, and then we'll see what we got to do in order to either replace these or not. Like this one, for example, doesn't actually connect through to anything. This one does. You'll see when I take it off. So let's just go ahead and first start by taking these off. Okay, so what we can see here now is we've got this hole does not need to have anything put back into it because this piece just sticks beyond the case. This isn't actually attaching the transmission like outer trapdoor onto the case. This one, because it's just a stud and a nut, this one's still in here tight, and we can actually just leave this exactly as it is. Now, what I may do just to clean up the look of it a little bit is I might pull this out and replace it with one of these bolts that we take out here at the bottom, just so that it looks a little bit cleaner. And then obviously this one we're just gonna take out, and that's gonna get replaced with one of the new pieces of hardware. So this might be, we need a 7/16 socket for that. So we'll take this one out. All right, and then we'll pull those bottom 2 bolts out as well. All right, and we do have this little cable retainer here that just holds up that wiring harness. try to put that back on. Assuming everything sits flat and correctly, shouldn't be a big deal. So I'm going to take our 3 new bolts, put some blue Loctite on them. And we'll get this all ready to go on. All right, now the exhaust bracket comes with this spacer standoff that's supposed to go in behind it here. So we've got that. And then put our hardware through. And then this is where I'm gonna try and put this little guy back on. I think that's how that went. No, that went this way. There we go. All right. So we can just get these started. And I'll grab the third one, get that started in the upper hole. All right. So now we just got to get those all snugged down, and I'm just going to make sure that that cable retainer sits correctly and doesn't pinch anything. Okay. So we've got those all on. That looks good. Now, judging by the bolts we pulled out and this little standoff from the bottom, these are almost exactly the same. So assuming that these two are the same, we should be able to take one of these bolts and put it there in its place. So before I do that, I'm just gonna clean one of these off just to make it look a little bit nicer, and pop that out, put one of the OE bolts in its place. Okay. And unfortunately, I was wrong. So this is actually not the same. That looks like a 1/4-20, and that looks like a 5/16. So I'm actually probably pretty sure I probably have a bolt we can put in place of this one. I'll check, but if not, I'll just go ahead and put this back in. But I'm gonna go look for a bolt, and we'll see what we got. All right, so I had a 1/4-20 Harley bolt with a captive washer on it that was sitting in my spare hardware box, so we'll just put that on. This obviously makes no difference whatsoever. Could have just left that other one there. I just thought it would look a little bit nicer, not having that kind of threaded standoff sticking there. I think just having a bolt will look a little bit better. All right, here we go. So we got our brackets set. Let's go on to getting the head pipes installed. All right, so here's our head pipe ready to go on. Obviously we've got the flanges put on here. Used new retaining clips. The old ones were obviously pretty rusty. And we've got the O2 sensor bungs plugged because obviously carbureted bike, not gonna have O2 sensors. So we're ready to go and throw this on. Now, if you recall, I mentioned that the original hardware for the head pipes was real rusted, and definitely those nuts we took off went in the trash. The studs, however, I was gonna replace, but after looking at them a little closer, they really weren't in bad shape. They had a little bit of surface corrosion, rust on them. I was able to just kind of clean that up with a wire brush and then put a little anti-seize on them. So they're totally fine. And with new nuts and some anti-seize on them, they'll be good to go from now on. So we'll go ahead and put this in using the original studs, but some new nuts. All right, so there's our head pipe hung loosely in place, and we'll go ahead and start to get the muffler put on now. All right, so muffler is here, ready to go on. Obviously this is a Bassani, if you hadn't figured that out from the thumbnail on the video. So yeah, and this ultimately is gonna be black, obviously, as well. Heat shields just aren't on there yet. So we're gonna put the clamp on to the muffler, and before I did that, I like to put some anti-seize inside of the flange here on the muffler, make it easier to take apart in the event that you have to do that again. So we'll put this clamp on. And you want to orient this obviously in such a way that the clamp is as sorry, start that again. You want to orient this clamp in such a way so that you can make the hardware, the big side of it, have as little visibility as possible. So the back will work sometimes, or sometimes the bottom, depends on the fitment of the bike and the pipe you're using. So let's see what we got here. Looks like the back might work on this one. Let's give that a shot. Okay. Yep. So the back is going to work just fine on this one. Got plenty of clearance there between it and the bracket. So actually everything looks really good in terms of clearances and fitments on here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the mounting hardware for the pipe the mounting hardware for the bracket and just get that put into place. All right, so everything's still loose. We can just make sure all the clearances are good before we start to get everything tightened down. All right, so now with the head pipe flanges tightened down evenly and the pipe nice and secure, just want to check and make sure we don't have any alignment issues or binding, or most importantly, clearance issues. So the most likely places you're going to run into that are going to be between the pipe and the footrest, pipe and the cam cover, pipe and the transmission side cover, and then kind of anything back here with the muffler. In our case, we've got a mile of clearance everywhere around this, so this is perfect. Obviously, there still needs to be room to get the heat shields in here, so that clearance is going to come down a little bit, but we've definitely got plenty of room. Everything looks really good. So next step I'm going to take is to tighten up the clamp on the muffler, and then the muffler mounting bolts onto the bracket will be the last thing. All right, so that's the pipe fully installed. Just got to put the clamps into the heat shields and get those put on as well. All right, so for putting on the heat shields, what I like to do is take a look at, obviously you've got in this pipe, or this shield, 3 spots where the clamps are gonna go. I like to eyeball where those clamp locations are gonna be on the pipe, so I can figure out what the best orientation for the screw to tighten and loosen these is gonna be. So obviously out of sight is the most important thing, but obviously you gotta be able to access it. So that is pretty critical as well. Okay, well, here's our heat shields kind of just loosely put in place. Everything looks pretty good. We'll just go through and just kind of check all of the clearances again and just make sure everything is aligned and straight and centered. And this pipe will be done. So I'm just gonna take care of that real quick and we can start to get this bike finished up. Okay, with our air filter all cleaned and re-oiled, we actually lucked out here and somebody actually replaced the OE air filter with a K&N. Still has the OE air box on it, which we're gonna leave, but K&N washable, oilable filter is nice. So took care of cleaning and re-oiling that. So with that ready to go, we can go ahead and get our backing plate installed. And one quick thing I wanna do here is just lubricate the O-rings on the back side of here a little bit. Get a good seal. And we'll go ahead and get this in place. I also have a new gasket stuck in back here as well. right, and then last but not least, we'll grab the cover. All right, got that all nice and cleaned as well. All right, so there's our air cleaner all cleaned, carbs cleaned obviously as well, and we're ready to roll. I think we've just got a couple little button ups to do here, and I'll be ready to get this bike started and hopefully take it for a ride, and then we can really see what else we might have to do. All right, well, I honestly can't believe how perfect that was. Obviously, we've got to get the bike back on the lift so I can do the oil change. Like I said, definitely needs it, oil and filter. But there's really nothing else to do. The carb is pretty much perfect for this pipe. That was sort of my guess. I had seen on the bottom of the carburetor that somebody had already removed the kind of stock plug that they cover up the adjustment screw with. Maybe it had had a set of aftermarket pipes on it already. I don't know, and somebody put the stock ones back on. No idea, but it runs great. Strong, no missing or anything like that. It's killer. I kind of forgot how much fun stock 88 motors are. I mean, it's definitely not the fastest Dyna on the road by any means, but it is fun. It's light and nimble, and I mean, particularly for the price it's going to be sold at, this is going to be a really fun bike for somebody with, a whole bunch of little things you can do on it, but it's ready to go down the road. There's really nothing that has to be done other than, personal preference stuff at this point. So I'm going to get this bike back on the lift while it's warm, change the oil, and then after it cools off, probably give it a good final cleaning, and then we'll probably be done with it. So I think we'll probably just end the video here. No sense in you watching me change the oil on a bike. I can't imagine that would be interesting for anybody. And certainly if you've made it this far through the video, an oil change is probably a little anticlimactic. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked on this. And yeah, like I said, it'll be for sale pretty soon. We've still got to list the other bike we just did for sale as well. So I don't know, maybe I'll put them both up together. But this is the beginning, hope, of something new, of being able to do these kind of quick turns around on these bikes, show you guys what we can do to take a bike from something that maybe was a diamond in the rough and make it into something that just looks really good and is functionally ready to go. So I'm hoping you're all liking it. If you do, please let us know. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that good stuff. And hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.